Welcome to Club E. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I am your architect of business growth. I'll work with you to unlock the potential and amplify the scale of your business. Today, we're talking about the state of office space. Before we get to our talk, I want to thank our sponsors: Irish Titan, a web development and e-commerce company; Boulay Group, CPA and advisors; Highland Bank, a locally owned community bank; Romaine Berg, a digital strategy agency; Minnesota Sales, a sales acceleration firm; and the Network Connect, catalytic gateway for connecting people, companies, service providers, and money. Before we get started, I'd like you to subscribe and like our Club E channel. We need your help, so please take a moment here. I'll give you a few seconds. I won't get started until you do that. Again, click the like and subscribe button. It's right below the video. It's going to help us deliver better content to you, our wonderful audience, as well as more value to our sponsors. All right, there we go. I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Eddie Rymer. Eddie is a principal of Avizin Young, like Davidson. And Eddie, welcome today.
Thanks, Rick. Happy to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and Eddie and I have known each other for a number of years. He's got a bunch of fun things going on the real estate side, and look forward to hearing about that. So again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yep. So how you can participate in the comment field, you can ask questions and some other things in terms of a giveaway that we'll do. But before we do that, Eddie, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, the firm, and the various activities you're up to.
Sure. So I've been in the commercial real estate industry for over 15 years. I solely focus on tenant representation. So what that means is if a company has office space, industrial space, and they need to renew a lease, buy a building, expand, maybe they have locations throughout North America, we'll help them with that real estate process. And 2 years ago, I joined Avizin Young. We're a global firm. We have an office here in downtown Minneapolis, and it's just been a great place to work.
Yep. And then you also do some fun stuff in your spare time. Not that you have tons of spare time, but tell us a little bit about the 21 Ironman that you're training for.
Yeah. Now that I'm doing this live on a video, you have proof. So you'll have to check in with me next year. So as off camera, as I mentioned, my father, who will be 69 this year, has done 6 Ironmans. He recently qualified for Kona and did that. We went down to watch them, which was an amazing experience. So I committed to doing one with him next fall in 21, which will probably be the Madison one. So I'm trying to train for that a little bit.
Great, great. Well, which one's tougher, the training for that or doing the real estate world?
Well, with COVID, maybe the real estate world. We'll see.
All right, that was a loaded question on my part. All right, so for you, our audience, if you have a comment or a question, put that in the field. You also can type in hashtag office space. And for those of you with 5,000 square feet or more, we're going to pick one winner, and Eddie and the Avizin Young team will review your operating expenses to see if they are A, too high, and then B, will work with you to find a path to negotiate a reconciliation. This is a wonderful opportunity, again, for you folks with 5,000 square feet or more. Eddie will work with you to look at your expenses. The hashtag, again, is hashtag office space, and one winner is going to be chosen. In addition, it's an opportunity for you to ask your questions. So please participate during today's event. So Eddie, with folks looking at ways to cut expenses, and with the COVID situation, everybody looking at their operating costs, obviously rent's probably one of the highest expenses after payroll. What do companies do or business owners do when they're looking at those costs? And A, can they give some, or B, maybe even give it all of their space back?
Yeah, so that's something that we're hearing that a lot today, those questions, and having a lot of those conversations, Rick. And to punt a little bit, it really depends on the company and their situation. So, for example, we're working with a technology client of mine today that took a lot of space about 1.5 years ago, and they had an automatic takedown right to take more space. Well, they're not going to need that space. So we're going through that process now? Do we try to negotiate to extend our current square footage in order to give back the expansion? Or do we just look at trying to sublease the expansion space? And I realize that's a scenario that's maybe a little specific to them versus other companies. But other companies, it's again, it depends where they're at. Some are asking for rent relief. That can be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Maybe they'll pay for some of their rent through their security deposit. Maybe they'll just get a delay in rent and then add that on to the back end of the lease, or they'll amortize it over the term of the lease. We're seeing success with that. And then, thirdly, it's, can we sublease our space? And that's always an option for the most part. I mean, most leases have that as an option. But even with that, it's who's going to then come in and be a subtenant. I know there's going to be a lot of subleasing opportunities on the market. So if there's companies that need to renew their lease and move or grow, they're in the driver's seat, no doubt about it, especially over the next 3 to 6 months. But again, to save money, it's kind of the things I just talked about. And then on the operating side of things, if not so much taxes, but if the operating costs seem high or have gone up a lot over the last couple of years, we can look at that. We can ask for, 2019, 2020. And like you had mentioned earlier, we can see if it's off compared to the market and try to reconcile that for companies. The larger companies have more leverage versus the smaller ones, but most of the time in leases, you have the right to do that.
Yep. Well, as we said, hashtag office space to participate with either your questions or to go in the drawing with Eddie to assess those costs, which would be a great way to maybe cut some costs looking forward. How about the folks that have a lease coming up? Should they wait on signing long-term leases? And you mentioned, there might be some attractive deals out there. How might that look?
Yes, for the majority of companies, I would say yes. There's a few we're working right now that have actually benefited from this shutdown and their business is continuing to grow. But for the majority of companies, if you can, again, depending on your size and when your lease expires, if you can delay 3 to 6 months, I would say you're going to have an opportunity to leverage the market more, just because there's going to be not as many companies are expanding, so there's going to be more office space options, and B, there's just going to be a lot of sublease options. So if you can maybe extend your lease for 6 months or 12 months and then get back out in the market in 3, 6, 8 months, if you can do that, I recommend it.
What about given the COVID situation? What are companies doing to protect their employees? Obviously, there's a timing issue. People aren't asking their employees to come back for different periods of time. I know we touched base on that a little bit about your firm beforehand, but tell me a little bit about some of the things that companies are doing to protect the employees.
Yeah, so specific to Avison Young, they're not requiring anyone to come back in through 2020. Obviously, you can if you'd like. And we're hearing that varies from company to company. And again, depending on what your business is, but a lot of it seems like it's going into the fall. But if we want to go back in, there's a lot of social distancing that's going on, the reconfiguring of space. Sometimes only a certain amount of people are allowed in the break areas. And then we have all the PPE equipment, masks if you want to wear them. They're not required for us, but they're there if you want them. You're putting up the plastic dividers between more of a benching desk scenario, and then a lot of cleaning. So not just the hand sanitizer, but nightly cleaning. You're just going to see a lot more cleaning going on, and the cost of that is going up. So all of those things and above are what we're seeing and hearing today. And I will add shifts. So again, depending on the company and the departments, maybe certain departments come in every other day or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the other ones come in Tuesday, Thursday. So you're going to see a lot of that as well.
Far cry from when people were worried about foosball tables.
Yes. Yeah. Those may be removed.
Actually, that's a good question. Let's go there for a minute. What changes do you see in the environment of offices?
So maybe this will be long-winded. We're seeing and hearing anywhere from plus or minus 25% of the workforce that will stay working from home when things go back to normal. Whether that's the end of the year, sometime in 21. So knowing that, you'd think people are going to need less space. However, I don't think you're going to see a lot of benching anymore. Again, you're going to continue to see some more social distancing. So it might be a net zero. If you have 20,000 square feet today and you're getting a quarter of your workforce working from home, but you have to social distance, you may still need 20,000 square feet. There's actually an example of this. On the other side of it is there's a company I know of that took an extra floor to social distance for 2 years, thinking that in 2 years it'll be back to normalcy a little bit. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out with the office space. Again, I think you're not going to see a lot of benching anymore. Even with the cubicles, maybe the cubicle walls are going to be higher. So we'll see how that all plays out. It's going to be interesting over the next 1 to 2 years, the requirement of space and how it's laid out.
And for a lot of these kind of emerging companies trying to be a little bit more interesting, hip, whatever, a lot of what those things revolved around were a commons area and the pool table, the foosball table, that kind of thing. So obviously there's going to be a lot of changes.
Correct. And a lot of times those types of areas, can spur discussions and innovation, and it's harder to do that obviously when you're not face to face with people, or the water cooler talk. So yeah, it's time will tell. Time will tell and see how that plays out.
Yeah, and actually you raise a good point on the innovation. So how do you come up with a space to co-create and innovate together when you're trying to social distance or have fewer bodies or whatever? Yeah, time will tell. Well, we'll check back with you on that, as well as how the training and Ironman went. So that'll be something we'll revisit in the future. Say for the companies that are growing, and like I said, they're looking at not spending as much money, trying to manage their cash flow. How can they hang on to some of their cash as it relates to their office space and say the FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment?
Yep. So when you're negotiating a deal, there's usually a few different buckets or levers you can pull from. You can push on the rent, you can push on free rent, or push on tenant improvement allowance. Landlords typically like to keep their rent kind of at market because it increases their value of the property. So the way to keep your costs down, your capital expense and out of pocket, is more tenant improvement dollars. So you can use that towards build out if you want, or we're seeing more and more of it, you can use it towards FF&E. So your rent might be, let's just say, at market, but you can use those tenant improvement dollars to go towards FF&E. With that said, I was on a call a couple of days ago. Construction costs have gone up 3, 5, 10% year over year for many years. And we had a project that just got rebid out, and it's about 10% less than what it was, 90 days ago. So that's good for landlords and good for tenants, because your dollar is going to go farther today. So I would say, yep, you just push more on tenant improvement dollars. You can use those towards the build out, FF&E, and or free rent.
All right, great tips. Thanks for sharing that with the audience. I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there who will benefit from that. So we talked a little bit about what the actual kind of space looks like. We kind of projected out from here. If I did ask you to kind of get out your crystal ball and say, hey, what does the future of commercial real estate look like? And I know it's tough, but what would your guess be around that, and what would you share with our audience on that?
Sure. So I'll just stick to the office portion of it. My crystal ball says it's a tenant's market here for the next couple of years, meaning tenants are going to have the leverage. Again, if you're in a position to renew your lease, even if that means you're downsizing, doesn't matter. If you're in a position where your lease is coming up and you get to tour the market, leverage the market, there's just not as many people expanding or competing for direct space with the landlord, let alone all the subleasing space that's going to come online. So I think we'll see a lot of opportunities over the next couple of years. Any companies that get through this and are in a position over the next few years to renegotiate their lease. And I'll even say, we'll see this with larger companies that will have a right to terminate. So let's say you have a 10-year lease, maybe even a 7-year lease, and 3 to 5 or 7 years into it, you have a right to terminate. Now there's usually costs associated with that, and different math equations and how to figure that out. But if you have a right to terminate, now's the time to look at that and consider it. Because even if it's $100,000 or $1 million, you may be able to make it up, right? And playing your termination card and renewing with your landlord or moving. And depending on the deal, you may even get, if you're moving, you may even be able to get the new landlord to participate in taking on that fee for you. So if you have that option to terminate, now's a really good time to at least run through that exercise. Hey, we don't really want to move, but should we look at playing this card and renegotiating our lease?
Okay. I'm sure that would be something that you could help somebody with or talk through.
Yep. It may make sense to do it, it may not, but it's worth the exercise.
All right. So again, for folks that have a question, put it in the comment field, as well as hashtag office space to get an opportunity to talk to Eddie about looking at the operating expenses and see if they're off the mark. And if they are, Eddie and his team will work with you folks to see if there's something they could do to improve the situation. We talked a little bit about how COVID had changed the workforce and that remote working. You said something which I hadn't heard before is very interesting, and I appreciate you sharing that, is maybe 20-25% of the workforce doesn't go back. How do you see this remote working outcome that might be happening here affect the needs of the commercial real estate market?
Well, again, I kind of go back to what I said earlier. It's going to, at least in terms of square footage needs, we're just going to have to wait and see how companies decide to, redo their space and plan it, and they'll work with the architect to do that. So I don't, is it a wash in terms of space needs? I'm not sure. One thing that's interesting that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago is, if you have employees, if you're downtown, which a lot of companies have moved downtown over the last few years, and you have a number of employees that take mass transit, what does that look like? Ones that need to come in the office. So, again, the crystal ball, I don't know how this is going to play out, but you may have a little bit of a migration from downtown back to suburban office just because of that. If 30% of your workforce is using mass transit and they don't want to be in mass transit, what do you do? So we may see a little bit of the, again, migration from suburban office or from CBD downtown office to suburban office. And we'll see how that plays out. I mean, not just in Minneapolis, but through all major metropolitan areas.
And we talked a little bit again about the commons areas and the space to innovate, and maybe foosball tables get yanked. Again, a little bit of a crystal ball, but talk a little bit more about what you see as the ideal future office space environment.
Well, I don't see a lot of those amenity centers being open for a while. I mean, and with that, it was an arms race to who had the best and coolest amenities until 2 months ago. I mean, we're downtown in US Bancorp, and they just put in arguably one of the most beautiful amenity floors and a gym and all that. The gym is staying closed. I'm not 100% sure what they're doing on the amenity floor. If our building or other buildings decide to open it up to some capacity, again, they're probably going to take out every other or every third table and chairs and have cleaning crews coming in daily, if not more than, a few times a day. So, and these landlords just dump millions and millions and millions of dollars into these, which affects your operating expenses. And if you can't use it, I don't know how that's going to play out. Moving forward, if landlords had those dollars allocated to build out these floors, maybe they'll put them on hold. Well, I'm not sure. But I think it's a wait and see. Again, with vaccines or, however you look at COVID-19, I think it's a wait and see here for at least the next 6 to 8 months.
Okay. And I know this is a little bit off the center of the bullseye for you, but just curious because a lot of people out there have been wondering about this question about the malls that haven't been doing as well, the shopping centers. How do you think those get repurposed? And again, this is just kind of a general question. I know it's not what you do day to day,
Yeah.
but just curious on your take.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at least repurposing it towards office use is a little tricky because of how malls are set up. There's not a lot of glass line, right? So you have your storefront, which pretty much has the glass, and then the rest of it's no glass. So they're difficult to repurpose from the office standpoint. Otherwise to repurpose them, maybe you could say they could be turned into some type of self-storage units. I know some people that do that, but a lot of it has to do with what the zoning, what you can and can't do there. So we'll see. I don't know. From the office side, it's always a little tricky there. And usually CAM and tax on the retail shopping center mall sides are higher.
All right. Say, as we're getting to the end here a little bit, there are some real nuggets. Again, thank you very much for participating today and sharing your thoughts. As you kind of think about this topic and what you said, is there kind of one main takeaway that you'd like our audience to bring with them after our session, whether you want to reemphasize something you already mentioned or something maybe we didn't get to, but what would that one nugget be that you'd like to share with everybody?
I would say if it's a company that's trying to save as much money as possible, and if they haven't done it, you got to take a hard look at what's allowed in your lease. Again, if that's going through your CAM and operating expenses, what does your lease say about subleasing? Sometimes your hands are tied. You can't do it with tenants in the building because the landlord doesn't want you to compete with, the companies that are in their buildings. So I'd say take a good hard look at your lease. We're happy to do that. Full disclosure, we're not attorneys, but we look at enough leases on a day-to-day basis where we can say, hey, you should think about this or think about that. So again, if companies are trying to save money, if they're in their lease and they're not in a position to renew or downsize or anything like that, which most aren't, look at your options, look at what the lease says, and then come up with a strategy and go from there.
Okay. I know it doesn't have to do with real estate actually, but a business question, a marketing question. You do some innovative marketing things, the SaaS challenge, some other stuff. Maybe talk a little bit about some of those aspects of your business, because it's one of the reasons that you and I have connected is a variety of the things that you've done from an outreach perspective.
Yeah, thanks for the question. A little self-promoting here. So I do a lot of work with technology companies, SaaS companies with really cool office spaces. So last year, I did an office bracket challenge, and Irish Titan ended up winning it, and it was a national challenge. It coincided with March Madness, and it seems like a lifetime ago, but March Madness was in Minneapolis last year. And so it was a really fun opportunity. It got me to get in front of companies all throughout North America in a way that I wouldn't be able to get in front of them by just calling them up. And then that parlayed into SaaS Office Space. So the way I explain SaaSOfficeSpace.com is kind of a parade of home or Pinterest for cool office space. So some of the companies I represent, most of them I haven't, but if a company's in the market for cool space, they can go on there and say, I like this, that, or that, and take it back to their architect, design group, whatever. So that was pretty successful. And then this year, I was going to go bigger and better. I was doing a booth out at SaaStr in San Jose. That got canceled, and March Madness got canceled. But we had 16 other new companies on there. which are now on SaaS Office Space as well. So it's just been a pretty fun opportunity to get in front of companies and brand myself a little bit. And then Rick, I mentioned this earlier. I will mention it now because of my passion to work with tech companies, and some of them being in a position now where they're not growing, they need to give back space, sublease space. I'm pretty close to launching it'll be a on the site on saasofficespace.com area where you can look up available properties, sublease properties from other tech companies. So it gives tech companies more exposure to subleaser space, whether they're doing it directly, hiring somebody like me or hiring another broker. I just want to showcase it. And then B, if you're any company, but let alone another tech company that's expanding, it can connect the two and hopefully facilitate a transaction faster. So hopefully we'll have that launched in 5 or 6 weeks, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Great. Well, I look forward to hearing
free
more.
Service.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing more about it and seeing it. So let us know when you do that.
Yep.
So kind of on a philosophical point of view here, or perspective, as you kind of look back over your career, I've learned a bunch of different things, and we've all learned a lot here over the last 2 months with the whole COVID virus situation. But what would you like to have learned sooner in your career? Was there an important lesson that really made an impact that you thought to yourself, gee, I really would have liked to have learned that sooner?
I think if I went back, 10, 15 years ago, just get as many good mentors as possible within your industry, outside of your industry. That's, if someone's did it for 20, 30 years and, a good mentor, you get to compress their knowledge in, a few hours or a few years, depending how the mentorship works. So the more and better mentors you can have, and I would even go as far as say is make it a goal. I'm going to have 5 mentors this year, and pick one from each area of your life, whatever. The more and better mentors you can have, it'll benefit you greatly.
Cool idea. Very good idea. Hey, again, thanks, Eddie, for participating. If somebody in the audience wants to find you, what's your email address and the website?
Yep. So it's Eddie, EDDIE.Rymer, RYMER, at Avison, AVISON, young.com. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, and my direct number is 651-226-7835.
And again, for folks that would like to have their name put in the drawing, #office_space, and Eddie and his team will look at your expenses and try to find some opportunities to shave a few dollars off what you might be paying. And it's a wonderful opportunity. So again, if you'd like to connect with Eddie, get your name in that drawing, #office_space in the comments field. A reminder to hit the subscribe button and the like button. And Eddie, we are going to definitely hold you to the training for the Ironman.
Okay.
And we'll have to have you come back to tell us a little bit about that. I also am very intrigued with this kind of 20 to 25% number of folks that may not come back. And I think we'll have you back to talk about that one.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate your support.
All right. Take care.